My name is Mario Quiroz. I'm a documentary photographer. I specialize on immigration issues in the United States. The show that we have here at Lawrence Heritage State Park, it's called Immigrants, a Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And it's a photo essay that talks about all the positive contributions that as immigrants we bring into the Commonwealth. We are a vital part of the state and we are present in every single aspect of its life. We are families, we are small business, we are sportsmen, and also artists. And the main idea was, to highlight that. It was to celebrate that heritage. And there's no better place to do that than here in Lawrence, Immigrant City, and especially here at Lawrence Heritage State Park. Massachusetts immigrants community is a really wide and diverse selection of nationalities and languages and culture. So to make this show, to produce this exhibition, it was really challenging working with so many different countries. We hope that this exhibition represents that mix, that represents that diversity. One of my favorite things is to mention that, for example, just here in Fitchburg, in Massachusetts, in Fitchburg, we have one of the largest Uruguayan communities outside Uruguay. So it was also, to have that balance between so many different countries. Obviously, here in Lawrence, there's a heavy Dominican community, and the Dominicans, Italians, and so many other nationalities. So at the show, we have about 3 photographs from different people in Lawrence. But later on, we're going to do a slideshow where we're going to show about 40 images specifically from Lawrence. And it was, coming down to Lawrence was really interesting. It was a really nice experience to see how the city is breathing new life to new waves of immigrants. And what it's really amazing is to see how they are taking step 3 after step 2 that was given by another generation. And we are about to start celebrating the Bread and Roses strike, that actually strike made by immigrants. So again, it's a really nice celebration of the immigrant heritage here in Lawrence. In this corner of the show, we have 2 specific photographs from Lawrence. One of them is Pat Ruiz. He's a Lawrence firefighter. And what is really interesting about him and his family, he was actually born in South Boston of 2 Puerto Rican parents. So Pat, his brother, his sister, and his sister-in-law are either firefighters or police officers. And what it makes a very interesting family story is that desire to serve their community comes from somewhere. And those are the values and the virtues that immigrants bring toward our communities, and they get passed down to the next generation. Another picture that I really like a lot, it is quite artsy, and I like that, is this one. Obviously, Lawrence was known, or has been known for decades as a textile capital of the country. And there's still some big companies around in Lawrence, and one of them is Polartec. And one of the things that I like, how both ends of the spectrum work together. Obviously, there's a lot of immigrants there. And so what they did is they are offering free English classes to their employees. So the first 2 hours of their shift are English classes. And it shows you how technology is also playing a big part on this. So obviously, and now everything is computer-based. And the employees or the workers need to know technical English to operate the machine. So it's just really interesting. And to see that indeed, the strikes and everything and all the challenges and all the also victories that unions and organized labor achieve, it's paying back 100 and something years later.
Okay, well, folks, I think we're going to have a little program here. I want to thank you all for coming out. If you don't know me, my name is Jim Beauchesne. I'm the Visitor Services Supervisor here at Lawrence Heritage State Park. This is our first exhibit after the renovations the long-awaited renovations of our gallery and the ceiling and the lighting, but it does look beautiful, and we're very happy to have a beautiful exhibit to kick it off. And it is a photo exhibit by my friend here, Mario Quiroz, I hope I pronounced that.
You did right.
Thank you. Who was brought to me by a mutual friend, Francisco Brea, several months ago when Mario was here photographing Laurentians for his Immigrants Project. And when I learned about the exhibit, I said, it's got to be here at Lawrence Heritage State Park. And we're lucky enough to have it here as its second public showing. So hope folks will come out to see it. It will be here through the middle of September. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Mario to tell us more about his work.
Thank you. Thank you, Jimbo. So welcome again, everybody. Thank you for being here this evening. So just a little bit about the project. So the title of the show, it's called Immigrants. I'm sorry, it's a different show. It's Immigrants, a Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And as you can see, there's a word game on that. And the main idea was just to share with our communities all the wonderful virtues and qualities that immigrants bring to our cities. We normally tend to just put everything in just one big picture, but you know, there's a lot of stories behind many things. And the idea was emphasize the good things, because unfortunately, immigrants are always highlighted in the bad side of the news instead of the positive light of news. And for the last, let's see, including the ones in November and December, I will have been exhibiting nonstop for almost 18 months, different shows, but all of them about immigrants. So that's a really nice thing to have a community, you know, a commonwealth that it's open to hear about it. Last year I did a show that was called Immigrants, a Commonwealth, I'm mixing titles now. Immigrants in New England, an All-American Tradition. And again, it's the same idea, is, you know, that immigrants are part of the fiber of our communities. And another show that I have right now, it's about domestic workers. There's a Massachusetts Coalition for Domestic Workers that are trying to pass a Domestic Workers Bill of Rights. And one of the things that we figure out that if we use art as an advocacy tool, we can reach out different communities in a very, let's say, using a backside door. And we have been showing that work. We did it at Burlington Public Library, then went to Somerville Public Library, then went to Framingham Public Library, then Quincy Public Library. It's coming to Lawrence, September 3rd. I was just early at the library just figuring out how we were gonna do the hanging. After Lawrence, it's gonna go to Hyannis, then it's gonna go to New Haven, Connecticut, and then it's gonna go to Chelsea. And the goal is to at least to do one full year of that. And what it's really interesting about that is that, again, we are using art to talk about social issues, which has a very valuable, or has a very, at least for me, very important role in our lives. And then going to this project, Immigrants, a Commonwealth of Massachusetts, it was born out of an idea from the Commonwealth Archives and Museums, Community Labor United, AFL-CIO, and the Student Immigrant Movement. Basically, the Commonwealth Archives, they are down by UMass Boston, just across the street from the JFK Library. They have a really nice, amazing photo archives about Massachusetts. But their archives, their photographs about immigrants were up to Irish, Italian, Polish. So they realized, like, oh, we need to update our visual records. So, you know, they contacted me, and then we did a plan, and we actually had the show. This same show, it was inaugurated by Secretary Galvin on April 17, which was just 2 days after April 15. And we were, you know, like, are we gonna have the show? And on Tuesday, so on the 16th, you know, I got a phone call from the archives. And they were like, Mario, if you're in, we're in. And I was like, well, let's do it. And actually, when I went down to the archives to do the installation, the police were blocking the roads. Like, you have to give, the password for them to let you in. But we had the opening as it was scheduled, and we got about, closer to 100 people. And it was really nice. So that's a little bit of the context of the show. The idea was to photograph different communities. And we came to Lawrence, we went to Fitchburg. Just for you to know, did you know that in Fitchburg, there's, outside Uruguay, there's the largest Uruguay community in the world. So outside Uruguay, then it's Fitchburg. Don't know why. Fitchburg. Fitchburg is 1 hour west, at least from Cambridge. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Why Uruguayans in Fitchburg? I guess the first Uruguayan went there, liked it, and everybody started coming to that specific city. Then I also got a chance to work with carpenters, union workers, and I got to see their reality in Worcester. And there's one of my favorite stories, and it's the very first picture on the right. So this kid came to the state from Brazil when he was young. Didn't know much about anything, so he graduated from high school. And then when he was ready to start working, he found out that he was undocumented. And, to make the story short, he already had a life, and he got involved. There was some deportation procedure against him. And it was his union co-workers who raised the money to pay a lawyer to fight his case. And he is now back in Worcester with his family. So you get to see a lot of the other side of our cities. And guess what? It's just really amazing. Because even though we all have different names, and our names are pronounced differently, and we all, let's say, worship differently, and we all have different foods, and we all like different type of music. One of my theories is, and this is a project in the making that I have, is one day I will do a photo project about religions, how diverse religion is. And my take is that with immigrants, despite the different names, despite the different rituals, the asking and the prayer is always the same. And that's something really interesting about immigrants. And not only about immigrants, but the community in general. That our aspirations as individuals, our aspirations as communities, as a family, are always the same. It doesn't matter if you are in the south or in the north, in the west or in the east. Basically, you want your family to move forward, and you are willing to do anything that you can do to help to happen that. So I think that's a really important, and that's like a starting point. We're going to show two things really quick. Oh, by the way, just to show off a little bit, I don't know if you saw this on Friday. So we got a really nice newspaper article. Yeah, the Eagle Tribune. And it was about the show. For this project, I think, maybe I took, closer to 1,000 pictures. And just for a technical thing, this is film. So film is just one click and that's it. So 1,000 pictures mean 1,000 pictures. But obviously we don't have space for all the photographs. So you have to be very, it's the 5 minutes that you have to wear your mean shirt and edit things down. And when you are editing a show, it has to be a balance between, geography, between male and female, young and older, and different old trades and everything. So at the very end, you come down with 30 images, and you have to leave a lot of things out of out of the frames. But fortunately, we have a projector, which means that we can show our Lawrence photographs. And just to tell you a little bit about when I came to photograph to Lawrence. So I don't know if you know Francisco Brea, but Francisco Brea, if he sees you, he will come and say hello, and he will talk to you, and in 5 minutes, he will be your friend. So if you want to walk in Lawrence and say hello to everybody, just walk next to Francisco. And Francisco worked also for AFL-CIO. So it was because the unions, AFL-CIO and Community Labor United were part of the project. Basically, Francisco was my contact for Lawrence. And he was so nice. He was like, whatever you need, just tell me. You need me to be where at what time? And we actually met 8 a.m. and then he drew me all over. And he was like, oh, we need this type of photographs, and we need this, we need that. And he was like, oh, we're going to go here, we're going to go there, and we're going to talk with somebody. So that's how I got a chance to photograph so many different places and so many different people. And then on top of that, if you photograph, you know that it's very hard to get into some specific places. But I got the good fortune to be allowed to photograph inside Polartec. Polartec is, the big company that is on Broadway. And it was just really nice to see how, and you'll see there are two photographs that are textile related, and they are the opposite to each other, but it has the same spirit. So in Polartec, and to say something very good about them, is they do have free English classes for their workers. So they just figure out that they need them to actually operate machines, and so for real they need them to speak some technical English. And they figure out that if they give them their classes for free during their work hours, during their shift, they will be there. And it's actually working. So it was just really nice to see that too, to say something good about one of Lawrence's largest employers, probably. Now, also what makes documentary photography so interesting is that you can see a photograph in two layers or two different approaches. Obviously, if you know people, then you are seeing the person that you know. That's one way. And then it's when you see them in a historical context. Because Milagros is probably one of the greatest community organizers from Lawrence. And then it goes, if you leave Milagros and emphasize on community organizers, you'll see that our communities and our cities move forward because of people like her and her organization. So I don't think there has been any immigrant wave or immigrant group that didn't have a community organizer. I mean, probably during Ellis Island's time, it was not called community organizer, but there was somebody there. There was, Mr. such and such or Mrs. such and such who knew how to run through the system. And it's thanks to them that our communities can actually function, or it's a kickstart. So I asked Francisco, can I photograph somebody that represents families moving forward? The result of one generation pushing the next one. And he said, yep, we're gonna go somewhere. And there were two things that I really like from her office. One is that she has a huge picture of her mother. It means that indeed she had a big influence on them. And then if you see to her right, two things. One is a little thing, three things. 2 American flags, and next to that, the word family, and on top of that, a picture of Martin Luther King. So you see how when we adapt and we start taking things. And it's the process of becoming part of, of the community. So we were driving, and Francisco said, "Oh, what about firefighters?" I was okay, let's go. And he was just walking in. And actually, I don't know if you have ever been inside a fire station, but it's really cool. It's really cool. They have their suits next to the trucks, because the idea is that you have to come running down and then, kick your shoes on and jump in, and then you have to put it in like 10 seconds and be in the truck and and you go out. Anyway, so it was really nice that I got to see that happen twice. The bad thing is that at that time we hadn't asked permission to photograph. So it was all this action happening and I couldn't photograph that, but never mind, life gives you rewards. Because right after that, after all the commotion, he just walks in. I'm like, oh, what's going on? So his story is, his name is Pat Ruiz. He's from South Boston. His parents are from Puerto Rico. And his brother, one of his brother is also a firefighter, and his other brother is a law enforcement. And one of his sister-in-law is also a law enforcement. So what does this tell you? Do you remember that we were talking about family and family values? When they say that, apples come from apples and orange from oranges? So, he came from somewhere. His values, his desire to serve the community came from somewhere. Immigrant values. Now, the name of his business, I think it's something like La Barbería, or Barbería Hispana. So, it translates very simple, Hispanic barbershop. And you know how you don't name things like, you don't call something Italian bakery. You have a name and then it's an Italian bakery. So he was one of the first Dominicans to come to town, that came to town. And he was the first person who actually opened a barbershop, a Dominican barbershop. And then through his barbershop, the rest of the Dominican barbershops were born, because he was the one who trained the rest of the barbers in Lawrence. So again, probably I think he only cuts, like really old school people, old folks. He's the one who does the special customers. And then, everybody else is working there. But again, it's that example of being there, have been there, and working hard for so many years. This is another one that I really like, and La Bodega, right? And it's really amazing to see how many things can fit in such a small space. You're going to ask for anything, and they will say, yeah, move something, get it somewhere, but they have it. And not only that, but there's no computers keeping track of the inventory, right? It's not like, oh, do you know where the something is? Oh, let me just check. They will say, oh yeah, I know where it is. And again, it's also just interesting to see that despite that we live in a modern world where, .com is around and we have access to many things, it's the bodega is still working. This is another one. These two are brothers. They're siblings. Now, this is one of my favorite. Everett Mill. We were with Francisco and we were like, we need to find something that, textile company in Everett Mill. And indeed, we went all the way to the top, all the way to the end on the 5th floor. And they were just starting up a small business. And they were, they're still getting all the materials. And it's really interesting because there are two business partners. One is from Puerto Rico and the other one is from Dominican Republic. And it's just really interesting. Immigrants are bringing back textile industry to Lawrence. As an opposition to this, right? of empty spaces. Now, it was really hard to track him down. So in the same building, or actually a building next door, what they do is they buy broken appliances. They fix them, and then they sell them. You see, we are so used to, I don't know, it's something that I guess along the way we lost. But before, people used to fix things. And immigrants, back in their homes, they do fix things. So the idea of buying something that has been, refurbished is very logical. Plus, come with 1 full year warranty. And also, they have a shipping company to Santo Domingo. So if you want to send something to Santo Domingo, you go there. This is the parking lot that it's next in the same block as El Taller. And Francisco told me about him. He sings, he has a guitar, and he goes to people's house, and he's a really nice, really sweet person. This is another shop that is in Essex Street. And again, I think she's from Peru. Peru, right? Yep. Do you know her? Then you can tell her that I show her photograph. Yep. And again, it's family. It's family. Because his song is learning from him. And it was really funny. That day, the son was upset for something. I don't know, one of those things that happen. But then for the picture, they had to smile. So it was really interesting. And before coming here, we stopped there just to have some coffee. And there's somebody there who's working. And we asked her, "Are you like his brother?" She was like, "No, we just look alike, but we are not related." So it was interesting. And of course, Francisco Brea. Yeah. This is already in Polartec. And again, we could always talk about the challenges that workers have. And normally if there's a union, it means something, right? It means that there's some problems that people have to work out. But in general, I think, people are putting their talent on it. Now, it will be really interesting talking about the Bread and Roses, that this is like a modern version of the context of the Bread and Roses. Just machines and so on. And also interesting to see how just 100 years, things have changed so much. He is from the Azores. If you want to know what he's doing, so what they do is Polartec does the fabric that goes inside the jackets. Like the warm part of the jacket, when you put it on, it's really, so they do that fabric. And what they do is, they make things white, and then they just stick it into those machines that will give the color, the final color. He's Canadian, by the way. Now, also, another interesting thing is, they didn't know that, we were going to go to photograph them. They saw the camera 5 minutes before the picture was taken. So there was no time for them to get ready. But all of them were with their makeup so well done. And it was really interesting. Now, if you want to break the ice with any immigrant, you know what's the best way to break the ice? The easiest thing, World Cup. Ask them how their country is doing in the World Cup qualification. You have an entire day to talk about things. Julio, he's from Ecuador, and I think Argentina and Ecuador, they were about to play or something, so, But yeah, just ask about football. And you see that also then in Lawrence. Immigrants are from many different places. This is Eddie. He is a union representative in Polartec. He's from Mexico, just in case you wonder there was a Mexican in Lawrence. Yes. Yeah. And she's from Vietnam. And our last picture of Polartec. So yeah, that was the story about Lawrence. And again, it's to share that idea. It's to share that we can, last month, I was working on another project with Salvadorians in East Boston. And I always, I will tell them that Salvadorians have the tendency of being very humble. Like if you ask anybody about Salvadorians, they'll say, oh yeah, they're hardworking people. But if you ask a Salvadorian, they will not say it. They'll say, yeah. So, we tend to keep things to ourselves. And sometimes, in general, immigrants have the same problem, that we don't celebrate the things that we do. We don't celebrate the things that we achieve. In the show, you will see there's a lot of small businesses. And small businesses start in the most humble way. In East Boston, there's a business owner, a restaurant owner. He started selling tacos out of a small cart. Then, he became successful, bought a small restaurant. Then the small restaurant became successful and sold it and bought a bigger restaurant. There's another picture you will see her. She's pushing like a shopping cart that she sells tamales and coconut water and so on. So in El Salvador, she used to go out and sell products. Like she had a big basket, put it on top of her head and, go out and street selling products. When she came here, she just figured out that instead of a canasto, instead of a basket, she could just push a cart. And she go out every morning and sells things. So that's the spirit. That's what makes us want to grow. And then some other family, one of my favorite old-time pictures is there's a family who's having dinner. And then you can see the family sitting there, and then you can see the stove, like a very normal, traditional, basic meal. But there's one thing on it, too. Everybody is around the table. And everybody is sitting at the same time. So you see, this is the magic. This is what the project is all about. It's to celebrate this moment. It's to celebrate who we are. And I could go on and on and on and on and so forever. But I don't know if you saw Conrado and Natalie's picture. So, and this is another project that I'm about to start working on. It's called Turning Tides, the Decisive Generation. So, when you talk about immigrants, you cannot leave the whole immigration issue on the side. We do have a real problem, and there's most likely not a single immigrant family where somebody somehow, it's undocumented. Either directly, indirectly, and it's part of reality. And there's this generation of kids who they were brought up when they were little, and they, when they graduate from high school, they don't have a chance to go to college because they don't have a social security number, they don't qualify for anything, so life is very complicated for them. So one day, somebody decide, nope, I can't take this anymore. And they say, okay, I'm documented, and I'm not afraid of talking about it. And instead of hiding me, I'm going to go and try to create opportunities. So in Massachusetts, their organization is called the Student Immigrant Movement. And these are really bright, smart kids who actually are doing something to change things. And my take is that in 20, 30, 40 years, then, Massachusetts senators will be coming from there. Or the top CEO of whatever company will come from there. Or the greatest philanthropist of the generation will come from there. Why? It's very simple. Because they face adversity. And because they were able to overcome that adversity. And that's a secret ingredient, actually, in an immigrant's life. It's the adversity that makes us overcome challenges. And, I think that's really worth celebrating. And I do thank Jim for having us here. I'm really glad that it's the show that it's reopening the gallery and, with a new lighting and the new thing. And let's hope that, we can keep the conversation going. Also that we will see you in September at the Public Library. And that's it. So if you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer. So I always tell that black and white and color, the difference is what poetry is to literature. Literature is about 300 pages. Poetry, it's about 1 page. So in poetry, you have to, you have to be very concise. And black and white itself, it's not a reflection of reality. Color is a reflection of reality, right? This is white, the table is wood color, this is gray. So life has color. Black and white, it takes away the distraction of color, and it lets you emphasize on something else. So that's the first step. And then, I don't know, I think I always have the joke that I was born like 20, 30 years too late. Because I really love that, the whole old school thing. And this is black and white film, and the prints actually were made straight from the negative. So I do love, going into the dark room and spending time. I think there's more magic on it. So, when I don't have anything against computers, but, when you are in the dark room, that in the summer is really warm, and you're trying to get the, the right print, there's more of you involved. You have to control your emotions better. There's more involvement. I think those will be the one technical and one personal reason. Indeed, my professional goal is to be the leading photographer on immigration issues of my generation. So it's kind of like ambitious, but yeah, it's, black and white has that power to go beyond, an immediate perception. We were talking earlier with Ginny on how, the present is not the result of the present itself. 2013 is the result of 2008 and 2001 and 1996 and 1974 and 1960, whatever.
And 1912.
Yeah. So we are the continuation of all of that. With Ginny, we were talking about, how normally on the first or the second or third generation, an immigrant family is the one that actually started going to college and graduating from college and so on. So, this generation is a result of this, and this. And yeah, there's just the work of unions. And because people know better, can expect better. All right, so then, thank you so much. Thank you for coming. Francisco, ¿cómo estás?
¿Cómo estás? ¿Cómo te sientes?
Bien.
Escúchame un poquito tarde, pero estuve en el IRS, tenía un meeting.
So, obviously, immigrants, we do many different works and many different type of works. And one of them is cleaning. Like we clean houses, we clean buildings, we clean offices. But within that, there's always some magic, always some poetry. And one of the reasons why this is, a photograph that I really love is, it's an ordinary moment but with some magic on it. This one here, this is Bill and Eco. Bill is from Ireland, from Cork, and Eco is from Japan. They met here, and they're together, and they bought a house in Medford. The house was really falling apart. They went to Home Depot and learned all the free classes, and they put him back the house, and it's a new version of the American dream of the house.
Absolutely.
Then this one is in Chinatown in Boston. We normally will drive through, but to discover the magic of, sometimes you have to step out and start walking and seeing and hearing. And
I have walked there because my wife is a Chinese immigrant herself.
Okay.
And works nearby, so.
So
I've been
you
there
know
many
that.
times.
Yes. And actually, Chinatown is really interesting. If you take, the alleys or the off streets, and you go downstairs, there's like a whole world there. You can buy live fish or whatever. So yes.
All kinds of things,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Then this is from Springfield. They are both Colombians, and they have a foster home. So when some kids need, court needs to put the kids into a house, they take them in. And about 5 years ago, they got a baby that was really, really sick, and the doctor said that he wasn't going to make it, and they decided to adopt the baby and to give love. And this picture is 5 years after that. So it's a good example of love and generosity. Then I always have the joke that if I were not married and if she were not married, I will ask her out. She's the most amazing, or the second most amazing woman that I ever know, after my wife. She was born in Moscow, then her family moved to Germany, then to, I think it was Belgium, and then eventually came to the States, and was one of the first female PhDs in education. So again, it's that example of perseverance and the product of family's effort. This one here, he's from Framingham. He's a senator in the State House.
Right.
And what I like about the picture and the way that you put politicians and immigrants is that it's the invisible work of the people behind him that makes a politician advocate for their community. So it's a two-way work.
It gives them stature.
Yep.
Also.
Right.
Yes.
And, they're literally and figuratively behind him.
Yes.
Support.
Yes. This is in Boston at the Islamic Boston Society. And, we're not used to see them that close, or like culturally speaking, we're so different that we never do the extra step and, to go and interact. But, it's there as everybody else. It's the joy of friendship.
Having fun together.
Yeah. Drinking Pepsi and eating Doritos.
That's American.
Yeah, that's American. Well, we'll talk about this one. Just a few seconds ago, we were talking about a radio show that get broadcast from here from Lawrence, and it's from 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. And this is in Springfield, and his main audience are field workers, farm workers that are in the field playing the radio while they're working.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And you will never think in Massachusetts, like
in
that
New England,
picture.
yeah.
Yeah, that picture it
Farm workers,
doesn't
but
match.
they're here.
But yeah.
Yeah.
And he plays rancheras and Tex-Mex and bachata and the whole thing. So she is the director of the Chelsea Collaborative. Again, a grassroots, community-based organization that fights for, immigrants' rights, for low-income tenants. Yes.
Place a lot like Lawrence.
Yes.
Very dense, very immigrant.
Actually, Chelsea is the smallest city in the Commonwealth, but has plenty of people.
Yeah.
This is in Worcester, and this is what we were talking about. About Chris, who never knew that he was undocumented, and then at some point something happened that he was in a deportation procedure, and it was his co-workers, his union members, they like him so much that they basically said, okay, now we're going to raise money to pay a lawyer, and they actually did and help him, to get his immigration status. One day, we were talking with somebody that you cannot go one single day without interacting, with an immigrant. Your food, your services, everything.
Although we don't always know it. we
Always,
see it.
yes. This is a car wash in Somerville, and somebody cleaned the windshield, somebody prepared the food. This is East Boston Savings Bank, and what is really interesting in this branch is when you go to their desk, they will say, hablo español, falo portugués, and the next desk will say, parlo italiano. And it tells you that, how, for example, the same city has been the arriving port for so many different communities, for so many different generations.
Where did you say that was?
East Boston.
East Boston.
Yeah, which,
But it could be Lawrence.
it could be Lawrence. But, those are in East Boston, and it's also interesting in East Boston. So, before we're Italians, now, Central Americans, but there's a new wave of immigrants. Arabs are moving into East Boston. And when you walk around, you will see more, Arab families or Middle Eastern families. So it's next wave. Yep. This is here that we talk about. We talk about him too.
Polytech must be an amazing place.
It is.
So huge.
Yeah. Although I will say that they have the new building, that it's fully functional, and then from the old building, there's only about, out of I think 3 or 4 floors, only one. So I guess also technology has,
Yeah, the
has to
production's
do.
in the more modern
Yeah.
space.
Yeah. This is the family that we were talking about. This is an ordinary moment. This is just probably right now they must be having dinner today. And everybody around the table.
Sure.
And that's, yes. Yeah. This is Friday's prayer. And as a photographer, probably this is one of my greatest achievements. Because, I never grew up having a Muslim friend. I never. So when we went there, I wasn't sure what to expect. And they were so welcoming, and they were so open. They were like, oh, you want to photograph? Sure, just go ahead. No problem.
Yeah, not what we'd think.
Yeah, not what we think. So it was really nice. Now, if you want me to tell you the secret of the photograph,
You can fly.
I can fly, or there's a second floor that has a handrail that has glass on it and it has reflection. Yes,
So below the white line is glass.
this is glass. Yes, yes. And anybody that rides, the red line has seen this in Park Street, or sometimes you will see him by himself in South Station, but it's just really nice. And
They're part of the family in Boston.
yeah, and this is the lady that we were talking about, that used to have the basket, the produce, and now, the shopping cart, and she sells tamales and coconut water.
In New York recently, I saw a woman selling sliced mangoes.
Yes.
on the corner.
Yep. Well, go to East Boston in the summer and you will see it.
Yep.
This is from the Domestic Workers Project. And the idea was just to highlight, not to do the traditional like stereotype portrait of a domestic worker, like a woman holding somebody else's baby, but no, like more empowering.
She's
more,
an individual
Yeah.
herself.
It's incredibly,
Yes.
it's very intense.
Yes.
that program.
And I always like to tell the story that, at the beginning she was really shy. And then, this is frame number 35. So, it's that process.
Amazing how it can change.
Yeah. This is Rocio Sáenz. She is the director of SEIU, 32BJ.
I know Marcio. She's
Yep.
been here. She, of course, led the Justice for Janitors campaign, first in Los Angeles, and then appeared in the movie about it, which is titled Bread and Roses.
Oh, really?
Yeah?
Okay.
Oh, you gotta see it.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. The movie's about the janitors, organizing the janitors in Los Angeles.
When was the movie done?
In the 19, it's
When-
about 8 or 10 years
Oh,
old.
really? And it's called Bread and Roses?
It's called Bread and Roses.
Go to the website, subscribe to that movie, that will come.
Can we watch it
Well,
online?
well, you probably, and on YouTube, something like that, you
Wow.
might. I watch a movie that's on YouTube, but at least you can get the information talking about it. Yeah, that's
In the climactic scene, the organizer tells the workers about the Lawrence strike of 1912 and says, those oppressed immigrants fought and won, and you can too.
Wow.
Yeah.
that's good. What a job.
Once a year, there's an immigrant day at the State House. And, this was last year. And basically, 95% of the people that I photograph, they know what I'm doing. So, they are willing to participate. And when I ask them about it, they're just, sure. And it's a really nice reaction from people. From an artistic point of view, probably this is one of my favorite. We were at his shop last week. So he's from Uruguay in Fitchburg. He learned the trade from an Italian immigrant in Uruguay. And when he came to the States, he basically put up his shop, and now he's the furniture maker of all the fancy furniture stores that you will see in Wilson Street or in Newberry Street. All the designers will design the furniture, and he will make them. So it's,
He must have a lot of workers, does he?
no, it's a very small
Family.
family shop. Yeah, very crafty. Yeah.
Interesting that he learned it from an Italian immigrant in Uruguay.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because we think America is the only country that receives lots of immigrants,
No.
but not so.
No.
It's a worldwide
No.
phenomenon.
Chile has a lot of Germans, or Argentina has tons of Italians.
Some of them weren't exactly the nicest people.
Yeah. I wonder, it will be just interesting to find out if more Italians came to the States or went to Argentina, because there's tons of Italians.
Lots of the Nazis went to Argentina.
And Chile.
Italy was also a Nazi.
Yep, yep. This is from he's Salvadorian from East Boston. And I guess he's a character. He will go,
I couldn't tell.
yeah. This is the one that we were talking about, Natalie and Conrado. He is
And where are they?
in Boston. They are the student immigrant movement
Okay.
leaders. Yep. And I'm sure one day we'll see, Congresswoman Natalie and Senator.
What are they doing, sorry?
So these are youth leaders that organize undocumented students so they can go out and try to fight for in-state tuition and that type of thing. This is a very good picture that talks about magic can happen. So we were photographing in Fitchburg, and we stopped at a restaurant to photograph the owners. And Joanna, who's the community organizer in Fitchburg, she started talking to these people, Like, oh yeah, we have been shoveling, for the last 2 days because, they do this during the winter. And so I just overheard that and I was like, oh, are you going back? Yeah. Can I go and photograph you? And they were like, yeah. So they were shoveling a roof. So I had to, climb on a ladder and take the photograph. But yeah,
They're on a roof? I hadn't even realized.
yeah.
Shingles?
You know what? Out of habit, when I was far back here, and I saw that picture, I thought they were skiing.
No, shoveling. This one is in South Boston. So this is a community. It's South Boston Community Health Center. So I'm going down looking for him, and I just see a person that is smiling to everybody, and everybody's trying to talk to him. Health centers can be a little bit complicated. Start talking to him, and he's the one. And immigrants tend to be more friendly and more welcoming. Yes.
He looks it.
Yeah. This one is in Jamaica Plain. And you know how in the movies there were the little corner where all the real deals were happening? Like all the seniors or the old school folks will come and talk. So in Jamaica Plain, this fruit stand, it's the place. If you want to get, the blessing to run for office, if you want to have the blessing to open a business, if you need to be introduced to somebody for something, you go through there. And it's just really interesting. Yeah. Then this one is Roxana. Roxana, it's a beauty salon owner. And one of the interesting things is how, beauty salons are those places where cultural transactions still happen. That's where you learn things. Young women will be talking about with older women about bringing up the children or so on.
Talking about men.
Talking about men, yes. What you see, and I thought it was really interesting that the conversation will be kind of like bilingual. One will ask in English, the one will answer back in Spanish, and it goes back and forth. And this is the very last one. This is somewhere in Worcester. And sometimes also, workers work a lot and don't get pay, or it also can happen, but, that's when union and organizing comes to hand.